We're going ahead and get started here in just a second. Chairman Dillard has provided notice to me that he cannot be physically present. He'll be attending and chairing the meeting remotely. And Chairman, over to you.
Thank you, Joey, and good morning, everybody. I apologize for not being there in person. I have a medical procedure I have to have done this morning, and the only time they can fit me in because they need a special X-ray machine is immediately following this meeting. So I apologize for doing this remotely, but if I had to pick a month to do it, this should be a relatively short meeting, so it's good. And thank you. I do want to, because I know there's another board member that has a time constraint as well. We will move up the vote on items 6A and 6D to right after the public comment section because I'm going to need to leave. And if I have to leave, if we do run over, I'll turn it over to Director Colson. But I think we'll be able to finish with me still being able to chair the meeting from here. Leanne is off on business, and Jill will sit in her stead today. So before we begin, let's review the guidelines for today's meeting. For those of you who are in person, please turn your microphones on when you wish to speak and off when you're done, so we can limit whatever recording problems there may be if there's noise in the background. With Joey's assistance, I'll call on those with questions or comments. And for those like me, I'm doing remote work today. Keep your audio on mute as much as possible, and that'll apply to me. And when you have a question or comment, please raise your virtual hand, and the board secretary will call on board members who have raised their hands one at a time. When she calls on you, lower your hand and unmute before you begin to speak. And with that said, I will now call to order this meeting of the Board of Directors of the Regional Transportation Authority. And if everybody could please rise who's in attendance there, and Director Gorman, who's good at this, will lead you all in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all. Item 3 is the approval of the minutes from the board meeting held on
Chairman, we have the roll call.
Oh, yes. Yes, we do. Can you take the roll, Madam Secretary?
Sure. Dr. Indalcio?
Here.
Dr. Carey?
Here.
Dr. Colson? Here. Dr. Fuentes?
Here.
Dr. Gathering?
Here.
Dr. Gorman?
Here.
Dr. Groven?
Here.
Dr. Holt? Dr. Lewis?
Here.
Dr. Melvin?
Here.
Dr. Pang? Here. Dr. Ross?
Here.
Dr. Sager?
Here.
And Chairman Dillard.
Here.
We have 13 present.
Thank you. And thank you all for your attendance. The roll call, it appears on my screen, so I just assumed we had taken it, and we hadn't formally. Now, item 3 is the approval of the minutes from the board meeting held on February 15th of 2024. Any comments or corrections? If not, how about a motion and a second? And Joey, could you let me know who makes the motion and seconds to approve the item 3, our minutes from the last meeting?
Dr. Groven and then motion, and Dr. Carey seconded.
Thank you. On that, Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Dr. Indalcio?
Aye.
Dr. Carey?
Aye.
Dr. Colson? Aye. Dr. Fuentes?
Aye.
Dr. Gathering?
Aye.
Dr. Gorman? Aye. Dr. Groven?
Aye.
Dr. Holt? Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Melvin?
Yes.
Dr. Pang?
Yes.
Dr. Ross?
Yes.
Dr. Sager?
Yes.
And Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
We have 13 ayes.
Thank you all very much. Item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting, and I believe, Madam Secretary, you do have one written public comment that came in.
That is correct. It's a comment from one of the gentlemen who presented last month, who spoke about the Chicago Halstead bus. He just wanted to write, to the RTA board, I'd like to express my thanks to the RTA board for the willingness to investigate the RTA's powers under section 2.06 of the RTA Act, and for the RTA's letter to the Chicago Department of Transportation to better serve the transit needs of riders in our region. To be honest, I did not expect such a robust response from the RTA after my public comment at the February 15th board meeting. I'm glad the board and staff took our comments as a call to action. It is my hope that increased bus lane mileage in Chicago and the region can create a more reliable, equitable, and expedient passenger experience that grows ridership as well. My sincere thanks, Carson Lowen.
Thank you, and we appreciate his testimony last month as well. And as we'll hear in our Transit is the Answer report, we've acted on what these two public commenters last month asked us to do. Item 6A is an ordinance amending the 2024 to 2028 capital program and extensions to ICE-funded projects. And I believe Tara O'Malley will explain this to the board.
Good morning.
Morning, Tara.
I'm Tara O'Malley, Principal Analyst in the Capital Programming Department. Today, we are requesting your approval of the following ordinances for consideration. An amendment to the 2024 to 2028 capital program, as well as an amendment to the ICE program. Next slide, please. Our first ordinance request is for an amendment to the 2024 to 2028 capital program. The funding for the 5-year program includes changes to the approved funding and projects for CTA and PACE. The overall program is increasing by $196 million. CTA's program is increasing by $120 million, which includes $100 million in a federal discretionary award, which is being programmed to CTA's Red Line extension project. PACE's program is increasing by $76 million, which is the reprogramming of Rebuild Illinois bond funds to the River Division Electrification and Expansion Project. Metra's and the City of Chicago's programs are not being amended this quarter. Details of all revenue and project changes can be found in the board memo and schedules 2A and 2B in your board packet. Next slide, please. Our second ordinance for review is the request of extensions for ICE-funded projects. CTA and Metra are each requesting a 1-year extension for 2 ICE-funded projects. CTA's projects are safety management systems and Ventra improvements, while Metra's projects are GPS train tracker and downtown terminal displays. Next slide, please. In light of keeping today's presentation in brief, staff is requesting the adoption of the following ordinances: the approval of an amendment to the 2024 to 2028 capital program, and the approval of changes to the ICE program. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we are seeking your approval for these ordinances.
Thank you, Tara. Any questions from the board or comments?
Director Groven has a comment.
Yes, Director Groven, good morning.
Thanks. Yeah, just regarding the extensions, is that increased scope or delayed projects? Do you know why we're extending those?
As far as ICE extensions go, there's a lot of the implementation that comes into play. And so I think it's just, I will get back to you. I don't have that information right off the top of my head.
I would just add, by statute, that there's a 2-year timeline and the board needs to renew it. So usually these things take a little bit longer. So it's kind of a course of business.
Dr. Gorman has a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Joey. Just briefly, obviously, support, this moving forward. But, the innovation coordination, I think is necessary. I know that, Metra, myself and, another director had an issue with, updating applications and whatnot. And I'm sure it's coordinating the new, fares that Metra is going through right now. So we'll be patient as this, is, moving forward and getting coordinated. And Also, the terminal displays were noticeable, at, out in Orland today. So I think that that's, really a great addition to, what's happening out there. But look forward to hearing with Metra, per, Director Colson's, issues with that 10 ride and the updates on the technology with the application. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Gorman. Any other questions or comments?
Not at this time.
If not, how about a motion and a second to approve item 6A?
Director Sager, motion, and Director Gorman, seconded.
Thank you. And with that, Joey, will you please take a roll call?
Sure. Director Indalcio,
Aye.
Director Carey,
Aye.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gathing,
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven,
Aye.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Melvin,
Yes.
Director Pang,
Yes.
Director Ross,
Yes.
Director Sager,
Yes.
and Chairman Dillard.
Yes,
13 ayes.
thank you. And that is adopted. Items 6B through 6D are the approval of contract and expenditure items as they appear on the board agenda. These items for consideration include item 6B, which is an ordinance authorizing a contract for signage and fabrication and installation. 6C is an ordinance authorizing a contract for transit access to opportunities platform. And 6D is the approval of travel expense reimbursements. Any questions or comments on these? I will say Malik is around if there are questions on 6B and 6C.
Director Colson has a question.
Yeah, thank you. On 6C particularly, we know equity is an important part of our strategic plan, and I would hope that any platform or any study would include some mention of ticketing methods by all three service boards and how they impact different groups differently, particularly seniors and non-English speakers and persons with disabilities, people unbanked. And then particularly in my area, it's a big issue. Well, Metra is starting to put machines in, but they're not putting these ticketing machines in a lot of places that are traditionally underserved. I look at the Healy and Mayfair, there are no ticket, in North Glen even, there are no ticket machines. Some of the machines take both cash and credit cards. Other machines take only credit cards. I just think you ought to take a look at where the machines are going as part of the larger study of the ticketing method and its effect on traditionally underserved populations.
Excellent comments.
Just to quickly respond, we can definitely use the tool to do demographic and geographic analysis, and you'll hear during the update section a little bit more about the tool. So we will take your recommendations and come back with some analysis of the Metra locations. Also, having talked to Metra, things are going in phases. So to sort of get some machines in there quickly, I've heard that some don't yet have cash capabilities, but they'll come back and put a machine there that does. But just to speed up the process of getting a machine there, they are putting it out in phases.
And the Healy station, Director Colson's interesting because they actually have more outbound traffic than they do inbound at that station.
Right, there must have been 35 people getting on at Healy this morning as I came in. And of course, there's no ticket machines. They had to pay cash, most of them.
Yeah, and it's a greatly improved station because I was there for an unveiling ceremony. It's very nice. Any other questions or comments on B, C, or D on item 6? If not, how about a motion and a second?
Director Lewis, motion, and Director Pang, seconded.
Thank you. And on that, Madam Secretary, please take the roll on those 3 items.
Sure. Director Indalcio.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson. Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gathing.
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
And Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
13 ayes.
Thank you. Those are approved. Thank you very much. Now we'll bounce back to item 5A, and that's an update on transit is the answer, our strategic plan. And I think Malik will lead it off and introduce whatever other staff wishes to give us an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Chairman and members of the board, I'm Maulik Vaishnav, Senior Deputy Executive Director of Planning and Capital Programming. I will be joined by colleagues to present updates on a few items today. We will start with planning and take a pause for any questions, but then move on to finance, legislative update, and finally hear from our communications group on engagement. I'll let each staff member introduce themselves as we go. Next slide, please. There are a number of planning topics to cover today. For time, I'll try to keep my remarks brief and we'll pause after planning for any questions or comments. First is a reminder that our community planning call for projects is currently open and closes at the end of this week. We hope that a lot of applications will come in the last couple of days that it's open. Next slide, please. At our February board meeting, the RTA Board of Directors heard two public comments where folks expressed concern about the lack of priority given to bus transit in the planned reconstruction of the Chicago Avenue River Bridge and redesign of the nearby Chicago and Halsted intersection. This area is of particular interest as the new casino will be built in this area and provides us with an opportunity to compete as transit and increase our ridership. As a follow-up, Planning and Government Affairs staff have reviewed the current CDOT proposal and received feedback from CTA. Included in your board packet is a memo outlining the background information, detailing CTA's feedback and RTA's role in promoting transit-friendly corridors and bus priority, both in terms of the goals we set in Transit is the Answer, but also in the powers granted to the RTA under the RTA Act. In summary, the current design by CDOT does not do enough for bus riders along this corridor, which includes two of the highest ridership bus routes in the region, 66 Chicago and 8 Halsted, both carrying more than 15,000 riders on an average weekday. Secondly, the RTA Act defines a role for the agency to provide influence on transit priority corridors. The pertinent section in the RTA Act is short, and we are continuing to research its history and purpose, but we know that we can take a more active role in advocating for bus priority projects. So as a next step, we sent a letter to CDOT Commissioner Tom Carney expressing the RTA position on the current proposal that is also included in your board packet. Commissioner Carney responded to our letter offering a further review and a follow-up, so we look forward to that and we'll keep you updated as we hear more about this project. Next slide, please. The second update is regarding transit access to transit grant awards. You're going to hear a lot about access today, so if I mess up the combinations of words, I apologize. But local planning staff with the cooperation of the service boards recently completed the process to select new projects for Access to Transit program. As you probably remember, this program funds local municipalities and even service boards to complete engineering and construction for small-scale capital improvements to multimodal environment around rail stations and bus stops, highly visible crosswalks, sidewalks, multi-use pathways, bike parking, bus stops, ADA improvements, and such. We conducted a call for projects late last year and received 11 applications from the service areas. We are recommending 9 projects for selection to the next step in the process. 4 of these 9 projects will receive funding for phase 1 engineering only, which is sometimes hard to fund for communities of high need. So RTA will cover 100% of the costs, estimated at a total of $210,000. And the work on these projects can begin this year. The remaining 5 awards are phase 2 engineering and construction activities, and RTA will apply for the federal congestion mitigation and air quality funding that will cover 80% of the $3.8 million budget that is needed for these projects. These are expected to be awarded in 2025. The remaining 20% local match will be split between RTA covering $542,000 and the local municipalities covering $218,000. This year we received applications from CT and Metra, as well as Fort Heights, Harvard, Harvey, Hazelcrest, Itasca, Niles, and Waukegan. More details are available on the RTA website and in our agency newsletters. Next up is an update on the Access to Opportunities platform that you just voted on. I'll turn it over to Harsh Singh to walk you through some details about this tool. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Malik. Good morning. My name is Harsh Singh. I'm a principal analyst at the RTA, and I'm here today to discuss the Access to Opportunities platform contract that you approved earlier this morning. The Access to Opportunities platform is software that will help advance our vision of safe, reliable, accessible public transportation that connects people to opportunity, advances equity, and combats climate change. In this discussion, opportunities refer to jobs, education, healthcare, and other essential services. As you know, equity is a core guiding principle of Transit as the Answer, and it's central to its implementation. This platform will aid in fulfilling a promise of a more equitable transit system and transit investment, specifically for populations with historically poor access. For example, Black and Latinx residents combined can access over 17% fewer jobs via transit than the average resident. And as shown on this slide, Black and Latinx residents also have longer commute times when compared to all workers in the region. Not only is making transit more accessible morally imperative, it is also economically smart for the region. Next slide, please. The Access to Opportunities platform will aid in the implementation phase of Transit as the Answer, providing analytical tools for assessing key metrics and investment throughout the region. In 2016, the RTA began creation of its own Access to Opportunities Index, and this platform will help further advance those efforts with more comprehensive and up-to-date tools. The new platform will include various components allowing for detailed analysis of current access levels, including rich demographic data, transit schedule data, multimodal networks with travel times and cost. It is also important to note that this platform will be used in collaboration with our partners. This procurement includes access for the service boards and CMAP, allowing for a consistent analysis platform, efficiencies, and cost savings. Next slide, please. The platform utilizes big data and complex algorithms to assess the number of opportunities accessible via transit or any other mode from a given location. The example shown on this slide highlights some of the platform's utility. This map shows the areas that are accessible from a defined origin. In this case, it's the intersection of Cermak and Harlem, via fixed route transit for defined time thresholds. The colors represent travel time, with the dark blue representing 15 minutes and pink displaying 60 minutes. This type of analysis can be done anywhere in the region and with the ability to control for factors such as demographics, cost, travel time, and opportunity type. In addition to analyzing current levels of access, the platform can also model what-if scenarios or assess the impacts of transit investment, such as changes in service. The RTA plans to utilize the platform to inform policy and strategic decisions, assess equity across the region, create tools for project analysis and performance management, and lastly, aid in the technical analysis for Transit as the Answer implementation efforts. That concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back over to Malik.
Dr. Lewis has a comment, question.
Go ahead, Michael.
Does this map look at where the opportunities are? That is to say, if the jobs are in one area and we talk about the transit being in another area, the two may not necessarily coincide. So I wondered if in the analysis, there's any opportunity to really look at where the jobs are, and then how effective are we in terms of channeling transportation to those job opportunity areas?
Yeah, absolutely. I kept the graphic simple just so it's easy to see, but within this map right here, you can actually quantify the number of jobs that are accessible within those colored areas. So for example, for the pink, which displays 60 minutes, we would be able to say, okay, from this origin point, you can access X amount of jobs, and then within this time threshold. And the same for various different thresholds. Also, you can look at various opportunity types. So say you were only looking at essential services or white collar jobs, so on and so forth. So yes, it's possible to do that.
Would we be able to measure any progress against that over time? I mean, it would be important to know that over time, we're beginning to narrow the gap. So would that be displayed in the information that you provide?
Absolutely. I think we are planning to kind of chart some of the data that we're seeing on some of our performance as part of our performance metrics and on some of our dashboards. The data on this platform is also updated on a quarterly basis. So we'd able to have, very up-to-date data and also reflect changes in service and see how those are impacting access levels. Also just investment throughout the region. If there's a big capital project, what are the impacts on the number of jobs that are accessible?
Director Gorman has a question.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Joey. Just briefly, the pink 60 minutes and the blues 15 minutes, what do you mean by that?
So from the origin point, which is the dot on the map here, which is that's Cermak right there, and got the exact intersection we were at there. Cermak and Harlem. Thank you. So what that shows is via fixed route transit, the transit that's on the street right now, from that origin, including the walk time and the wait time to board fixed route transit. Those are the areas that you can access within that defined time threshold via fixed route transit. And then you can also summarize the jobs that are available within those thresholds as well.
Just that area? That's
From
not
that
going down.
defined origin point, but we can do the whole region. We can do an
Okay.
assessment of the 6-county area. And anywhere on the map, you can basically just drag the origin point and then the map will update.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Director, I would just add that you don't really see any pink going west because we don't have transit further out west on fixed routes that can get you to jobs or services. So it shows, this is a good example to show that because of the pink line and the robust network east, you can get much further on transit to a job in 60 minutes. But if you wanted to go the other direction, likely have to use a car. So those kinds of mismatch, what you just talked about in terms of where your job might be and where people might be, what is the disconnect with our network is something we can definitely analyze and bring attention to, especially as we talk about future funding, that if a route is cut or a route is added in a scenario, what kind of impact it has on people and jobs in the region where it happens.
Thanks for clarification.
Director Ross has a comment or question.
So how is this platform being shared with the service boards? How do they access the data?
It's a great question. So we really wanted to make sure that we are not doing 4 or 5 procurements in the region. It's a great way to show that we can take the regional lead here. So basically the contract is with RTA only, and there are a bunch of licenses provided to us, and we divvy up the licenses between the 5 agencies. So couple of folks at RTA, a couple of folks at Metra, PayCT will all have logins into this online platform, but the centralized contract is maintained through the RTA.
And from an equality standpoint, will we be asking the service boards to indicate to us how they are using this data as they build their budgets and develop plans for the future?
So there are several modules in the tool where primarily we expect early use to be on planning and scenario planning. So we can definitely make sure that they provide us updates. But basically, once they have a license, they're able to use them as they would like. There are even some operational modules. For example, if the service boards wanted to look at service planning, they'll be able to do that as well. So it'll depend on their needs, but definitely on the planning components, we can make sure that we are aware of what kind of use cases are being, useful to the agencies.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'll turn it over to Kyle Whitehead. He'll continue with an update on the Safety and Security Summit. Thank you.
Thanks, Malik. That is an amazing tool.
Thanks, Malik. We can advance one more slide. I am Kyle Whitehead from the Government Affairs team. On February 27th, the RTA joined with CTA, Metra, PACE, the City of Chicago, the State of Illinois, and other partners to host a cross-sector public transit safety and security summit. The event gathered nearly 80 regional leaders and transit riders to explore holistic solutions to the safety issues the transit system is facing. We were grateful to have Chairman Dillard and Director Ross in attendance as well. Areas of focus included enhancing personal security and addressing perception of crime on transit, incorporating transit-specific strategies into social services initiatives, and creating safer, more welcoming environments in transit stations and stops. Opening remarks were delivered by RTA Executive Director Leanne Redden, City of Chicago Deputy Mayor of Community Safety Garion Gatewood, and State Senator Ram Villavalam, who's Chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. These remarks were followed by an hour-long panel discussion with leadership from LA Metro and Metro Transit and Minneapolis-St. Paul, exploring how they are navigating challenges similar to what we are experiencing here in the Chicago area. After an overview presentation from RTA staff featuring rider survey data on safety issues, the event concluded with small group breakout discussion where city and agency officials, riders, advocates, and state leaders shared personal experiences, provided feedback on existing initiatives, and identified areas where additional attention and investment is needed. Just before the summit, RTA announced a new safety and security category in our community planning program. Organizations can apply for grants to support temporary station activation projects at rail stations and bus stops that help make the areas safer and more welcoming for riders and residents. Staff is working on a summary report that we look forward to sharing with officials across the region who can work with us and other partners to implement these safety strategies in 2024 and beyond. Of course, we'll share that report with you all as well. For now, I'm excited to share a brief video that captures the energy and progress made at the event. After the video plays, we'll pause for any questions and comments before moving on to finance. Go to the video on the next slide.
You're going to hear from some panelists today who have joined us from Los Angeles and Minneapolis to highlight the fact that this is a national issue. Crime on transit is not just a Chicago issue, it is a transit issue across the entire nation.
RTA, CTA, Metro, PACE, and suburban municipalities, the City of Chicago is committed to working holistically to improve safety across the region's public transit systems. The holistic approach to safety is the only way we move in a different direction.
We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to plan our public transit system that is so incredibly vital to our region for the year 2050 and beyond.
Educate riders on our code of conduct and also are trained to provide customer information, connections to services. That's a long way of saying really where our focus has been is building up additional layers to supplement the work of our police department.
I'm really excited to be able to dig into this a little bit deeper, not only share out what we have learned and done in Los Angeles, but to learn from all of you, especially in our breakout sessions, to be able to roll up our sleeves and take this on.
Thanks. Any questions or comments on the Safety Summit before we move along?
Dr. Gathing has a question.
So can you talk about some of the concrete actions? I know you mentioned adding a new category, but what other concrete actions are coming out of the summit?
Yeah, those will really be featured in the summary report, which will be coming out in a few weeks. But we are looking to, because this is an issue that's not something that the transit agencies can address on their own, we're really focused on partnerships with the City of Chicago, with suburban municipalities, with their health departments and their police departments, several of whom were in the room with us, to commit to specific actions in 2024 and beyond. And the reason we're working through that summary report right now is because we have a draft and we're looking for feedback and buy-in from some of those partners. So we hope to be able to highlight those partnerships in the coming weeks.
Kyle, and to all the staff, thank you. It was an amazing event. very well coordinated, very well taken by so many groups, and the speakers were phenomenal and very, very well done. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Doug Anderson, Manager of Budget and Finance here at the RTA. Today, for informational purposes only, I will present the first service board financial results of the new budget year. I'll be rather brief, covering operating deficit performance and relief funding status. Next slide, please. The operating deficit results through January were favorable to budget for CTA and Metra and very favorable to budget for PACE Suburban Service, continuing the trend we saw in 2023. Each service board's operating expenses were lower than budgeted, resulting in a combined $22.5 million favorable expense variance for January. Total ridership and in turn, total system generated revenue were essentially at budget. Monthly results tend to be volatile early in the year simply due to having only a single data point. Specifically, PACE's January expenses were well under budget due to not only lower headcount and labor savings, but also due to the timing of expenses such as consulting, professional services, and claims, which typically are not expensed until a month or two after they are incurred. Notably, PACE also had a 27% favorable variance in January of last year, which then moved closer to budget as the year progressed. Overall, though, the regional level 8.6% favorable variance for January was lower than the year-end 2023 variance of 9.8% we presented last month. Next slide, please. Our other routine update is the status of federal relief funding. Since last month, CTA and Metra requisitioned a combined $50 million, and as a region, we have now drawn down just over the $2 billion mark, or 57% of the $3.5 billion total. We continue to monitor the impact of positive budget variances on the longevity of the federal relief funding. But while those may change the timing of the fiscal cliff, they won't change the fact that a significant budget gap will still materialize by 2026 as the relief funding exhausts if service levels are to be maintained. Ridership at that time is expected to have recovered to about 70% of pre-pandemic levels, and new funding sources will be needed to compensate for the resulting lower level of fare revenue. That concludes the finance report. I'll pause for any questions before turning things over to Rob for the legislative update.
Dr. Lewis has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug, in past years, we've had issues with winters being pretty difficult. This has been a relatively mild winter. Was it fair to expect that we'd have a favorable impact on the finances because a lot of the things that would normally be done if we had a tough winter with a lot of snow and a lot of cold weather, was that to be anticipated in these results, and therefore maybe the progress that they made is impacted by that? Just your comments.
Yeah, I think they anticipated a normal winter, if you will. Like you said, we had a very mild January, except for that one weekend in the middle, which was really cold. February also mild. So when we see the results next month through February, I think that's certainly a factor toward the favorable result. I think the head count still being under budget is still the most predominant factor in the results.
Head count meaning ridership?
No, head count meaning labor force.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll move on to the legislative front.
Good morning, Rob Nash, Director of Government Affairs, and I'll begin with an update on the federal appropriations process. The next slide, please. Which you might have heard has achieved some meaningful progress. On March 9th, President Biden signed a bipartisan funding package that included several appropriations bills, including funding for public transit in the region. Funding levels largely mirror the amounts set out in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which with some small cuts to certain programs of less than 2%. The bill includes funding for 15 specific service board projects submitted through the congressionally directed spending and community project funding request process, better known as earmarks. Between the three service boards, these projects totaled more than $16 million. In other good news, USDOT recently announced grants to Metra and CTA via 3 programs. Metra received $100 million from the Rail Vehicle Replacement Program, which will be utilized for up to 50 additional rail cars. Metro's third largest funding award in its history. The CTA was awarded $111 million from the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods program for a portion of the Blue Line Forest Park branch rebuild. And CTA also won the region's first ever grant from the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation program, or SMART program, a $1.5 million award to implement bus queue jumping at 10 intersections. Lastly, ahead of RTA's upcoming visit to Washington, D.C. for the APTA Legislative Conference, our government affairs team, along with our federal lobbying team, hosted a virtual briefing on March 11th to provide updates to congressional staff from our delegation. Staff from 7 offices attended and were provided an overview on the latest ridership trends and strategic plan initiatives, including the Public Transit Safety and Security Summit that you just heard about and the Access Pilot Program. The discussion also addressed RTA's federal legislative priorities, including a possible ongoing role for the federal government in supporting transit operations and the need for continued capital investment. As mentioned, we'll continue those conversations through the ongoing outreach, but we will also be in DC in a few weeks with Leanne Redden, our executive director, and some of the service board representatives as well. We'll have a report on those meetings after they conclude. Next slide, please. On the state side, I just wanted to provide some quick updates on the session. This past Tuesday, the Illinois primary was held, as I'm sure everyone's aware, and matchups for the November general election have been set. In Springfield, in addition to the regional transit briefing for legislative leaders we hosted with the service boards in February, RTA has maintained a steady presence in the ongoing outreach to members, particularly on the fiscal cliff and transit funding in northeastern Illinois. A number of bills have been filed this session with relevance to transit. A few have advanced. It's been a quiet session though, including legislation that would have RTA report on service board safety improvements following any NTSB investigations, as we saw most recently with the yellow line. On April 3rd, RTA and the service boards will testify in the regional transit budget to the House Appropriations Public Safety Committee as part of the annual appropriations process in Springfield. And finally, just a few more dates for all of you as we advance toward the scheduled May 24th adjournment. All bills must pass through their chamber of origin by Friday, April 19th. And after that, we'll have sort of a clearer picture on the state budget as those negotiations begin in earnest, and we'll have that report in April. I'll pause for any questions before turning it over to Jessica Cave.
Dr. Sager has a question.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, has there been any status update or strong discussion among leadership within state legislature with regards to the governance portion of the part report?
Yes, is the easiest and most direct answer. We continue to hear conversations, primarily though from third-party advocates that centered around governance changes or proposed changes. I think the feedback that we've gotten from legislative leaders is much more in line with identifying particular outcomes that they're looking for the region to sort of commit and follow through on, as opposed to wholesale restructuring. That is not to say we very definitely could see independent third parties putting forth proposals on governance yet this session. I think generally the timeline we've been sort of presented with from the legislative leaders is a lot of discussion, education, sort of information sharing this session, and perhaps some of the more nitty-gritty negotiations on how transit funding and reform might come together for the 2025 session.
I understand. Thank you. I do understand that there was a proposal that was forwarded with regards to the supermajority requirements that was at least reviewed and put out there, and then it went back to CMAP, and the CMAP amended that back to its original recommendation. Can you give us any update on that aspect?
And Jill, please fill in any details. Two separate issues. So CMAP has been putting forth some legislation to amend some of their operational guidelines that would, similar to the RTA Act, define which elements or subjects or topics require their supermajority, and sort of the on the other side, what sort of more administrative activities can be
Right.
taken with the simple majority. They have filed amended language. We actually think there might be an update to that amendment in the short term, but essentially, through the conversation with CMAP's leadership and board, they have, I think, taken a more specific approach on which is in the supermajority column and then which is in sort of the simple majority column. I don't know if there's anything to add there, but that amendment has not been acted on yet in Springfield. But separate, that's a
Right.
CMAP governance
Right,
issue, not
understand.
ours. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, about the funding and proposal increases in the CMAP report, are any of those in the proposed legislation so far?
CMAP has another request on an appropriations for their non-transportation activities, land use planning and some other things. That also has not been acted upon yet in Springfield.
Okay, but I meant,
Separate from the transit funding issues.
right, but for the transit funding issues, do you have a sense of how much the increases that the legislators are proposing for the budget?
We've continued to work with the legislative leaders and agencies like CMAP and other advocates who did a lot of work to identify the need. And so again, we have a responsibility as an agency to define in specific terms the budget gap, and that's that $730 million figure that we've talked about. In order, though, to sort of achieve what we all want, which is an improved and enhanced system, CMAP did a lot of work and sort of identified that $1.5 billion mark. We talk about both because we obviously want to address the budget shortfall, and that's a step in the process. But if we want to implement the things that we all want to see, more frequent service and improve reliability, it's going to take additional annual operating funding. So it's in that ballpark.
Director Carey has a question.
I think I'm confused on what you were talking about a second ago about the majority versus supermajority. That's an amendment. You're talking about CMAP?
Correct. Yeah, two
You're not,
separate
you're
issues.
okay, so you're not talking about an amendment to the RTA Act?
No, I think they did look to some of the elements of the RTA Act, which allow us to take action on simple majority items and supermajority items to try and streamline some of their activities, but it's separate,
So they're
proposal
working
for-
on their own CMAP over there,
Correct,
not
their
that.
own
Okay,
internal
okay.
operations.
Oh, and while I've got the microphone on, in the legislative report that was sent out, and I don't have it in front of me, but there was an increase in the funding. Is that proposed or is that baked in there for funding for the free and reduced fares?
So the governor's proposed budget included about $3 million across both the free and reduced and paratransit services increased in appropriations. So, far less than those items cost, obviously, but a small increase from last year's appropriation.
Do we have any hope? I mean, I know that one of the things that CMAP, I think that everybody kind of put forward as far as funding is just fund that fully.
Yeah.
Is there any hope or is that
I
a dream?
I think we continue, we have provided background information to a number of entities, including IDOT and the governor's office on, the justification for walking that funding up. And we'll continue to advocate for that. I think some of the feedback, frankly, that we've gotten is we need to address that as part of the overall discussion. But just for clarification's sake for the board and anyone else, that $400 million number that we talk about for free and reduced and paratransit is included in the overall gap. So adding funds to those key programs closes the overall shortfall that we're facing. Helps to close, I should say. I'll turn it over to Jessica Cave from Communications.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Good morning. My name is Jessica Cave. I'm a communications specialist and have served as project manager for the Transit Advocacy Campaign, the first phase of which we spoke to you about in December. Phase 2 of our Transit Advocacy Campaign is complete, and the third and final phase is currently in market. As a reminder, this campaign is focused on spreading the message that transit is the answer to the most urgent challenges facing our region in an effort to build a coalition fighting for sustainable transit funding. The campaign takes the shape of a series of videos telling real-life stories about how transit supports the regional economy, mitigates climate change, and provides affordable access to education and jobs. These videos are promoted with ads on social media platforms, movie and television streaming services, online video platforms like YouTube, display ads, digital out-of-home, and print publications, including a print ad and newsletter sponsorship for Cranes. Phase 2 focused on transit's positive impact on the economy, highlighting a small business owner as well as an Amazon employee at the warehouse in Markham. It was in market for about a month and wrapped up earlier this week, and we targeted elected officials and the business community as well as geofenced around CTA and Metro stations. We're going to look at the 3 30-second ads that were created for the campaign. These are shortened versions of longer videos that are all now available on the Transit is the Answer website under Progress. Next slide, please. You can go ahead and play the video.
My name is Tamar Mizrahi, and I own a cafe chain called Goddess and the Baker. Transit is a huge part of our decision-making in choosing locations, as density and foot traffic is very important to the sustainability of our business, and it needs to be very convenient and easy for our team members to be able to get to work. Transit is the answer for a thriving small business community.
Next slide. Here we highlight an Amazon associate who rides Pace to work. You can hit play.
My name is Boniface Okori. I take Pace Route 364 to the Amazon Fulfillment Center where I work. This Pace service has been very beneficial to me. It's a big reason why I'm able to have this job. Lots of my coworkers take the bus to work as well because we know what we do is important. But people cannot do this work if they cannot get here. Transit is the answer for connecting people to jobs.
Next slide. Phase 3 focused on transit as an affordable option for commuters. This video features a regional Connect Pass user who commutes from Rogers Park to Hyde Park using Metro and CTA. This ad launched on Monday and will run through April 14th, and we targeted elected officials, transit advocates, and car commuters. Go ahead and play.
My name is Daniel Owens, and I commute to work on Metro and CTA. I choose transit over driving because I can do anything I want while I'm on the train. Because I'm riding on 2 Metro lines and CTA 3 days a week, I use the Regional Connect Pass. I pay $105 a month, which is much less than I'd be paying for gas alone. Transit is the answer to getting to and from work affordably and to keeping my household running smoothly.
That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Love that last one. Any questions or comments?
There are no questions or comments.
Thank you.
You know, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Chris
hi,
Melvin,
Chris.
those are very, very well done.
They are, and they're typical stories too. Great stories. Anything else from our panel?
No, Chairman.
Great. If not, thank you very much. Transit is the answer, our strategic plan. We continue to move forward constantly and educate, as Speaker Welch is telling us to do, educate his members and educate the public as well as the Chicagoland business and labor community. So thank you. Very, very, very good work. All right. I guess that brings us to new business, does it not, Madam Secretary?
That's correct.
Is there any new business to come before the board today? If not, I'll remind you all that our next meeting is April 18th at 9 o'clock in the morning. And Leanne said to tell you and assure you that in the staff presentations, especially with Transit is the Answer plan. Everything that she would have reported to us today was covered by Rob and Kyle and everybody. So with that, how about a motion and a second to adjourn?
Dr. Gorman and Dr. Carey.
Thank you too very much. And all of those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. I can hear you
Aye.
all the way. I can hear you all the way from downtown. The motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you all very, very much. And hopefully spring will be in full bloom on April 18th when we see each other again. Thank you all very much.
Good luck, Chairman.